John, what do you make of not just the gadgets being announced here, but the style in which they are being unveiled?
Well, obviously, Samsung likes to be aggressive. It likes to take this bold approach, and perhaps stealing a page from another company's book as a way to get some headlines. I think that people obviously have read so much about the possibility of all the features that could come with this smartwatch that some of the interesting things that you'll be able to do with it might not come as a surprise. And the voice activation towards making phone calls. I think that Samsung obviously has been trying to position this as a companion device, because a lot of people for now are going to sit here and wonder, why is it that I necessarily need a smartwatch? But if it can be made very clear that if you have a Samsung phone, for example, and you want to be able to do some of the stuff with your phone but not pull it out, maybe a watch is going to be of interest to you. I think that obviously there's this opportunity for the media to play around and test out this device, and for consumers too, before they'll really know if this is going to make their life easier or simpler. And that's what a lot of the consumer technology advancements are about. Something that I didn't think would actually make my life better. And Samsung's got to prove that, because we know, Emily, that there are already smartwatches on the market from companies big and small. Products that have gotten good reviews. Samsung's probably positioning itself a little bit differently, in the sense that as the largest smartphone maker on the planet, they might have an opportunity to interact with your life that's already on a phone that you might have. But certainly they had to step up in a big way to try and get people's attention ahead of what potentially could be Apple's next move in this very area. Emily?
And all of these devices, he said, will be available on September 25th. And speaking of Apple, yesterday I spoke to Brian Blair, an analyst of Wedge Partners, who we'll be speaking to later in this show, about whether Samsung would be taking any of the wind out of Apple's sails, given that their event follows next week. He said not at all. He thinks Apple's going to steal the thunder like it always does when it unveils not one, but potentially two new iPhones next week.
Well, look, for Apple to make an announcement like that, as much as we have discussed the possibility of it happening, is a big deal. It suggests that the company is willing to sort of branch out and potentially do a bigger land grab. And that's the kind of thing that Samsung is very aware of, this possibility that Apple, because of the price point of its high-end smartphones, hasn't been testing Samsung in some of the emerging markets, perhaps, where Samsung might have a greater market share. And that's for the same reason that Samsung feels it needs to battle back and try to take a page out of the innovation book and say, hey, we're coming out with a device like a smartwatch before a company like Apple. When you think about what Samsung has done with the positioning of its marketing and some of its campaigns, next big thing already here, for example, ahead of the launch of the previous iPhone. They are now in a position to make a similar comment tied to these smartwatches ahead of the all-important holiday season. So it's almost as if each company, respectfully, is taking a page out of their respective playbooks, and that is going to be the storyline playing out over these next couple of weeks between these announcements by Samsung today and the announcements coming next week from Apple.
All right, John Erlichman live in Times Square.